so, right? Does that say plenty already? Just in a little funnier way than Scott demonstrated a little earlier this morning. So there's two things going on here. There's another When Pigs Fly, which is, do you see my machine? It is a Macintosh, and I'm not using Parallels. I get to use OS X. It's fun. All right, so the deck. So I'm going to be really just doing a whole demo, and so, no slides except for these few, so that you can go to docs.microsoft.com to learn more and to learn how to set things up on the Mac. My demo is on my GitHub account, which is GitHub Julie Lerman, so you can just find all my repos there. Some of you may be familiar with the fact that I do a lot of work with Entity Framework, and I will be doing some EF code in here. I'm not going to talk too much in detail because I'm just more here about the fun of, I get to code on a Mac. Thank you. So the roadmap for Entity Framework, I just have a nice little bit.ly there, EF Core Roadmap. You can find that if you want that. Want to find that. Wow, it's moving around. I'll try to keep it on top of that. And my contact information. So basically, if you know my name, you can find my stuff. And that's that. So what I'm going to do really, I'm not giving really a lesson or, how to. I'm just going to show you coding in .NET on the Mac because it is so much fun. So I'm actually going to start, I should also preface this. I actually never even used a Mac before I started doing this, so I had to learn how to right-click. I had to Google how to right-click. How weird is that? Bing. I had to Bing it. Google. I usually say Google Bing because, I like to placate everybody. So the first thing I'm going to do is just show you just a little bit of the scaffolding magic before I get into my project. So I just created a folder here, and it's empty. And I'm going to go out to the terminal. And .NET's already installed here. I also used to only learn one keystroke command per year. Now I've had to I learn 100 a day. So I just did that. Cool zooming on a Mac. Yeah. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spin up just to create a whole new website. So one of the nice things about the .NET command line is that it's just all .NET something, just like Node is always you start with Node. If you used some of this stuff earlier, we had am I using DNX? Am I using DNVM? So this is all just .NET something. And it's pretty simple, .NET new. And if I just did that, it would scaffold a console app for me. But I'm going to scaffold a whole MVC web application. So waiting. Oh wait, it's already done. It's already created. Now I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code is cross-platform. It's written in Electron. If you're not familiar with Electron, it's for writing client apps using JavaScript. So totally cross-platform, open source from Visual Studio. You might be familiar with that name. It's from Microsoft. So let me make this a little bigger. So I'm just going to show you that, this is what it created and scaffolded. The controllers, and it's got Entity Framework in here, and, all the things. How many of you have already seen, at least some demo of creating an ASP.NET Core app from scratch? Okay, so you can find those all over the internet, especially, on the Microsoft Docs. But you can find those all over, so I'm not going to get too much into this. I just wanted you to see how amazingly easy that was. And I could have done that in Windows also, or on Linux, or I don't know, maybe on the iPad with that new app. Was kind of cool. So I'm not going to really bother with this one. Let me just close it. And I'm going to go over to the solution that my canned solution that I set up already. So this is actually something I scaffolded earlier, and it's just an ASP.NET Web API, so it doesn't have the whole front end. All right, and even though I did sneak a little extra code in here so that I don't have to type it all in front of you, that's actually right now it's hidden from the compiler. So this is just got a values controller. right? Notice I have a breakpoint here, like just like we're used to in Visual Studio, and I can literally debug this. Like I can launch the debugger, and this has nothing. That's a Visual Studio Code thing. I finally looked it up and like, yeah, that's just the way it works right now. Okay, I can live with that. Okay, so that's actually running now, and I haven't hit my code and the values controller yet because I haven't done anything with a controller. So I'll go to localhost and values, and boom, I get it. You know, I'm debugging with breakpoints, and there's not much interesting stuff here, but look, I can see variables and drill into them. So that's a really, really cool experience. And I have to say, every time we get a new release of Visual Studio Code, which are frequent, it just becomes more productive and more powerful. It's just really amazing. So there's the values controller. So I just wanted you to see, like, yeah, this actually works. And I like to know that it's working before I start adding all my stuff in. So I'm going to stop the debugger. And I'm not used to this. We just got tabs in here, so we got this little extra space up here. So I now am going to add, what I want to do is I'm going to build up a web API that lets me interact with some weather data, weather events, I call them. So that's my whole model. Oh, down here, by the way, that's an interactive terminal. It's built right in here. I can use one external, you know, like a whole window, or I can do this right in here. So that's really handy. Really handy for demos too, but I'm going to close that for a moment. So here's my domain model, right? Like a weather event. It happened on a particular day. It's a particular type. The types are defined by enums down here. People can add reactions, and people can add comments on the reactions. Okay, so that is really the whole domain model. So I want to build a web API that lets me persist this information and interact with it. So I can, you know, store weather events and reactions, and I can read them and do some stuff. So before I can build the values controller, I want to bring Entity Framework in here, because that's what I'm going to use for my persistence model. Entity Framework is Microsoft's ORM. And that's what I'm kind of good at. Like, I know it really well. So it is so awesome. I got inspired to do this because I talk about Entity Framework all the time, and I saw Nate McMaster from the Entity Framework team doing a little demo of migrations on a Mac, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy a Mac. I'm going to do this. This will be fun. And it is. It's been fun. And it's even getting a little more productive for me than it was originally, that's for sure. So what I need to do is go into the project JSON file. Now this, so just be aware, you know, this isn't like a whole demo of how to do everything. You're going to learn everything from end to end, but do keep in mind, this is going to change. And I don't even know how it's going to change yet, but the use of this project JSON. Maybe one of the things I love about it is that I can just go in here and add in my dependencies, my packages, right? That's really nice instead of doing it interactively one at a time. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to change. So just keep that in mind, what I'm showing you. That was just something I was hiding from the compiler, but I'm going to need it soon. I'm going to be careful with my keystrokes. So I'm going to add Entity Framework, but instead of adding Entity Framework, I'm going to add it by specifying the provider that I want to use. And, you know, I have to do everything new here. Oh, come on. I've only done this like 5,000 times. Where did my I can't do it. Oh, maybe this is the reason. Feel free to shout out, Scott. Like, I've never not had the snippets work. There they go. Whew. You don't want me to like type all this. So snippets in Visual Studio Code, really powerful. I can't do this demo without it. So I have all these snippets set up. You can do snippets for C#. You can do them for JSON. There's all kinds of snippets. And also you might have noticed like all those languages listed, there's so many extensions. The C# support in here is from an extension. So it's, you know, open source. I think Microsoft wrote the extension, but other people are contributing to it. So now I just need to restore this. And again, it's just .NET Restore. So that's just going to pull in the last packages that I need, the new ones. So it's going to pull in the PostgreSQL. Oh, so I never used PostgreSQL before either. So, you know, the Mac is new. All kinds of stuff is new here for me. So PostgreSQL has a dependency on Entity Framework Core. So it's actually pulled in those packages. ASP.NET Core, Entity Framework Core, they're broken up into small packages, so you only get what you need, right? So that dependency just brought down like some small packages as opposed to like one big huge package with everything you might ever need for Entity Framework. So that's actually enough now for me to go in and build up my data model. All right, so I have here, I have my DB, my weather context. So how many people are familiar with using Entity Framework and use it? You've been using it? You're probably using EF6. So a lot of this stuff actually is familiar, even though it's built from the ground up. So that might hopefully make you feel a little better about it. So now I want to say that this inherits from DB context, and I'm just going to pull in the namespace. Visual Studio Code's helping me do that. And then I'm going to also, snippets. These snippets were built in with C#, so this is similar to using Visual Studio Code, which is also nice. And DB set, like I'm always used to using. DB set of weather events. Okay. Also, I have to just do a couple other, pull some tricks up my sleeve just to make sure that this is set up the way I want it to be. That's going to make sure that when I have some database tables, they're named the way I want them. And also, eventually I'm going to need some overloads on the constructor, so I'm just going to pop those in there for now and reformat the code. That's one keystroke command I just haven't managed to pull off memorizing, so I have to, right-click. Okay, so now I have a weather context. That means now I can use Entity Framework migration. So my Code First Migrations lets you define what the database should look like based on what you've got going and what your data model looks like, okay? So this is, I will do this out on, do I have another terminal window open? Oh, right. So, before I can use Code First Migrations, remember I said that ASP.NET Core and Entity Framework Core, the packages are trimmed down. So the packages I have so far that let it know like what DB context is, they don't know anything about doing migration. So I'm going to explicitly pull those packages in, again through my project JSON, so I can do that. So I'm going to pull in the package that has the commands in it, and then also because of the way the tooling is working right now, I have to add this other reference down here to the tools. And I'm going to .NET Restore again. Pull down those packages. Here they come. I'd like to think they're coming out of another area of my computer, but they always act like they're taking so long that they're really coming down on the internet. We'll see someday. But I'm not going to experiment and turn the internet off right now and see how that goes. Unless we just skip the next talk, then, I'll just keep going. It'll be fun. All right, so now that I have that, I'm actually going to go out to the bigger terminal window and show you that now I can say .NET just EF, right? Tell me what EF has for me. That's its shortcut built in. Okay? Now, this is hard to see on this background, but we can blame or thank Scott Hanselman for the Entity Framework Magic Unicorn's pet name. And it has been fully embraced by the Entity Framework team. It's even in here. But what I want to show you really is down here are the commands that come along with an Entity Framework. So there's a database command that leads to other commands. The nicest one, the most important one of that is update, which will take whatever migrations you've created and actually apply them physically to the database. DB context, one of the most interesting commands inside of DB context is it's something new if you're used to Entity Framework. It's called scaffold. So not everybody gets to work on brand new projects, right? So sometimes, hey, if you in the back can't hear me because my mic keeps falling down, just let me know. I just noticed that. Okay, yeah, I talk kind of loud. Yeah, there it goes again. Just throw it away. Okay, so the DB context scaffold lets you point to an existing database and reverse engineer from it, since we don't have the designer tools to do that stuff with. All right, there's also third-party open source tools for doing that other people have created and are very popular and work great. But this, so DB Context Scaffold lets us do that. EF migrations, that's for saying, okay, read my model and tell me how my database needs to change. Okay, and then it creates a migration. And also we can script. So before I can run this, actually I'll show you what happens. .NET EF migration. So you just string these along, and we don't have tab completion yet for them. I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm going to say add a migration called init. And I'm going to get an error. But I'm showing you this because it's a really, really useful, helpful error. And if you're used to using any framework since like the old days, this is really nice. So one of the, for me, I'm happy to see this. The magic of Entity Framework automatically going, oh, you didn't tell me about a database. I'm just going to create one in like, this super special place, and I'm going to give it a name based on, some conventions. No more of that magic. We explicitly have to say where the database is and some other information. So since I'm using ASP.NET Core, I'm going to take advantage of its startup file. By the way, all of this starts up, this is so weird, all of this starts up with program.cs, like you're just building a console app. So everything, every .NET Core app starts from program.cs now, which is kind of cool. So startup is just configuration stuff, and I'm going to add in here some configuration to tell my app about Entity Framework. ASP.NET Core has support for dependency injection. So it's got a built-in inversion of control container. And that's what I'm accessing through these services. So I'm going to also add in there and say, hey, services, I want you to know about working with the DB context, and most specifically, my weather context. Okay, and when you see that, when you see a constructor wanting my weather context, please spin one up for me. And, by the way, you're going to need to know the connection string. Okay, so I'm getting the red squiggly lines here just because I need to bring in some namespaces. So I'm going to bring that namespace in, and there's my use NPG SQL, so it knew about that because I have a reference to it. All right, and why are you giving me a red squiggly line there? Like, really? Sometimes those things are related to just Visual Studio Code having a little hiccup. So I'm going to cross my fingers because that makes no sense. So the other thing, I've got this magic configuration in here, but nothing is magic. Up here, I've said, if you're looking for configuration files and I haven't told you where they are, by the way, take a look in this appsettings.json file, and then I've actually got my configuration, my connection string set up in there. So it looks like magic, but there is no magic. Yeah, that's really bothersome. How about if I says, fuck you, Julie. Oh, I'm sorry, did I just swear out loud on a mic? My mic, thank goodness my mic was all the way down here. I'm just going to uncomment that. I'm going to need it. Yeah, maybe that's it. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, maybe when I opened up my handy dandy snippet and I showed the C# one, maybe I hit something that messed that up. I also, in my snippet, I had a reminder to uncomment this because I always forget to do it. So I'm going to need that in a little bit. So now that I have that in there, if this is going to be more polite to me now than it was before, I should be able to go ahead and do the init. So that, I was talking about dependency injection, and dependency injection is something that happens at runtime, but migrations actually will take advantage of that and discover what it needs to know about it. Yes, and that works. So it just says it's done. So where's my database? My database, so I'm going to use another cross-platform tool, which is, it's called DataGroup. It's from JetBrains. And what's cool about this is, it's cross-platform, but it also lets me work with a ton of different databases. So I'm going to use it for Postgres. You can see I've used it for I've used it for SQLite in the past. So I'm going to refresh my connection, and there's my database. Wow, what a morning. And I've had this actually happen before where closing and opening. Oh, wait, there's one more thing. What have I not done? Oh, good. So it's not just me. No. Right? No magic. You have to be explicit. All I did was create the migration before. So now it's done. First, let me show you the migration. And this is for the benefit of all of my friends who have ever tried to do source control with Entity Framework. Who is among that group? All right. Well, you still have your heads attached. That's good. Okay, so this snapshot is now stored in code in your project, not in the database. So we can use source control with migrations now. Now, do you think my database is going to be there this time? Ta-da, there it is, okay? So there are my tables, EF migrations history, and I'm also going to take advantage of the diagrams here and show you that, yes, migrations, hello. There it is. Yes, migrations did what it was supposed to do. It even recognized all the one-to-many relationships between my classes and created the PKFK constraints between them. Am I going to like lose my MVP because I said I swore at a big conference? Well, I just got it, so you have to wait till next July to kick me out of the program because of that. I mean, it's Portland. Everybody says, every time anything's different, people say, it's Portland. So I figure, yeah, it's okay. All right, so my database exists. Now remember I said I had to uncomment that seed method. Now I'm going to actually run I can run my controller. So where's my controller? Lucky for you, it's already written. I don't have to rewrite it. Okay, so my controller just, I can go ahead and get some events, and I can get the I'm going to traverse through the relationships. So I'm going to include I'm going to get all the weather events and the reactions and their comments. And this is just basic web API stuff, right? And basic link to entities, even though Entity Framework got rewritten from scratch, it's still a lot of the familiar stuff. So here I'm just filtering on date. Here I'm filtering on the type of weather, which is an enum I can pass in. So my seed method is here, and all I'm doing is go away. Okay, I'm creating a whole bunch of events here, right? And then this is something I am doing for the sake of the demo. This is good, something you would do for testing, but I'm saying just get rid of the database completely and recreate the database completely for me before you go ahead and populate it with seed data. So that is called, you saw me uncomment that in the startup, that's going to get called from startup. So every time I run this, it's going to throw away the database, recreate the database, and populate it, and then I can run my app if it's behaving properly. So I'm going to go back to my cute little interactive window, and I'm going to say .NET run. Okay, so everything's running. Oh, it would have been cool to do it in, no. I want you to see the NPG SQL code being run here, right? So there's a whole bunch of it above. So my startup actually did talk to the NPG SQL, to the Postgres database, and populate it for me. Oh, that code's going to run great. So now I can go to my weather API, right? And I've got my data, and I've got even my graphs. And even down here, there's a graph that has even sub information, the comments. Okay, I can do my filters. I can do all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to walk through all the controllers just because this half-hour thing. But I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you one other controller. The reason I'll do that is my controllers. I'm just getting used to the tabs. They're new in here. You think after using Visual Studio for umpteen years, like I'd be like, oh yay, tabs. Okay, so that's my values controller. Did I not open up my weather controller? Yes, I did. So I also have some posts and puts in here, so I can go ahead and log new events if I want with comments. I can also do some editing where I'm retrieving graphs and making some modifications and saving them. And since this isn't any framework talk, I'm not going to talk about how I'm doing that. But I did want to show you, moving to the Mac, I was like, I saw, when you Google this question, you will see that 5,000 people have asked this question before. How do you do Fiddler on a Mac? And the answer is Postman. So it's really, really great app. So that's what I'm using to kind of test out in this way, to test out some of my puts and posts and things like that. So I'm not going to get into these too much, but I'm sending them and they're working, they're responding properly. So this is really nice to be able to set up if you have body that data that you have to push in, you can add the body. So it was a great tool. So yeah, is anybody keeping track of how many new things I had to learn in order to do this demo? Oh my gosh, wait, but we're not done yet. Okay, so the other thing, pardon me?
You're done.
I am a pit bull. Unlike Sarah Palin, though, I'm not a pit bull with lipstick. Or is she a bulldog? I can't remember. Sorry, no Republicans in Portland, right? I can say whatever I want. So Control-C, there we go. I'm like Control-C. I just hit Control-C like 5 times, like, oh yeah, okay, we don't want to talk to you anymore. So like that's all fun. The next bastion then was testing, okay? There's actually something really epic in,
Julie,
yeah.
got it. No, it's fine.
What? Oh, you were just saying 5 minutes?
No, you're over actually.
Oh, I'm over by what, 20 minutes yet?
No.
Okay, yeah, I can do this in 5, no problem. So testing, Entity Framework, like, yeah, you guys watch Michelle LaRue Bustamante at TechEd when the light is blinking red. She's just like calmly finishing up her talk. So if she can do it, I can do it. So here's the cool thing about testing. I've got, I'm really going to get it for that. So I've got a whole new project JSON for my test project, okay? And notice I'm not using NPG SQL. I'm using this in-memory provider. This is brand new with the Entity Framework. I can actually just have it spin up data, and all of my save changes and link queries and everything I'm doing with the Entity Framework will work with that in-memory provider. This isn't Redis. This isn't to replace Redis. This is for testing, okay? So I've got a reference to that, and in my tests, I just am setting up to use that in-memory provider with my context. I pass it into the context. I clear everything out again with ensure deleted, ensure created, and then I'm adding in a whole bunch of test data there. So it would be easier to see this over here. CD, and then backslashes. Oh yeah, CD. That wasn't backslashes, that's me not being able to type S too many times. Okay, good. So I'm just going to run now .NET test, and it's going to run my 2 tests for me. It's going to run through it. My tests are pointing to my other thing, and, well, they're not working. Yeah, maybe .NET Restore, but I'm not going to worry about that because I don't care. Let me just tell you, the in-memory provider is just amazing because you know how much work you do to write up the mocking and fakes and things like that, or like sometimes you really want to see what's going on in the database, right? But when you don't, you can do testing, and that's all using XUnit, also open source. And this works. I've done this like 5,000 times, so like who cares? It's just not going to work today for me. So the last thing I want to show you, and this is just going to be really quick because Anthony Chu is going to come up and really do a whole like Docker and container presentation. I'm going to switch over to a different branch just because, God forbid I forgot to put something in and then tried to run that. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done. Let me check this branch out, or commit that branch. Thank you. Boy, my Git skills have also gotten quite enhanced since doing this. So in here, the most important thing in here is that I've got a YAML file, Docker Compose. Yeah, I had to learn even how to pronounce that. It doesn't look like it says YAML, does it? And it just says to please spin up one container that is Postgres and another container that has my web app in it, and then let them talk. So I can actually just deploy all this stuff to Docker, right, and then take those containers and put them in whatever hosts I want to. So just make sure Docker is running. There it is. And then I'll just say Docker Compose up. "30 years on Windows." Okay, now it's spinning up the Postgres container, and you can see with the blue, that's working with the other container. Now the website is attempting to talk to the Postgres container, and is it going to? This works for me like every 9 times out of 10. So every once in a while there's a 10th time when it just says, what does it say to me, what my computer is saying to me? Blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Sometimes I just have to run it a couple of times. I'm not going to bother because Anthony is going to talk all about Docker. The point is, because this also runs on Linux, I can put it into these containers, right? Because the containers have all of the .NET Core stuff that they need, and then I can push them to a Docker container and push the Docker container to wherever I want them to deploy, to Azure or whatever. So, yeah. That was really what I wanted to show you, and who knows why all of a sudden the tests and the Docker were being mean to me, but I think that was really the time, because they did something to my computer so it shut down all of its intelligence after I have gone on way too long. So I'm going to stop.